The pitfall every project manager should avoid. My name is Guilherme and I'm a project management specialist. I help professionals to become successful project managers. Before I start, make sure you like this video here and share with other people that want to learn project management. When you like this video, you also show me that it has value, that helps you in your career and helps me to continue to go forward, to continue to move forward. Today I'm going to talk with you about a pitfall that's quite common and can be very harmful for you as a project manager. And this pitfall is the reviewing the baselines. Of course, when I'm talking about reviewing baselines, I'm talking about if you're following more a waterfall approach, because then something like Scrum, and why this can be so harmful. Because the baseline, it exists to give you reference to understand how your project is going. However, I've seen project managers that they review the baseline of the project very often. And what does it mean? Every time you're delayed, instead of understanding what's going on and looking for an action plan there, what they do, they just review the baseline. And what happens in general, the gap starts to grow, and later on, the project comes out much more later than it should. To illustrate that, I want to give you here some example. That happened with me in 2015. Oh, in 2015, I was working as a project manager in Brazil in EPC project, engineering, procurement, and construction, and I got a new project. It was to build the electrical infrastructure of a wind farm. So I was responsible for building it, the substation and the distribution lines, and the small substation, the small transformer that goes in just side by side with the wind tower. And of course, for me, that was an amazing project because I was dreaming at this point to build or to work in a wind farm for a project for a couple of years already, and finally I got the chance. And then, of course, this was a 1-year contract that I have, or me and my team in this case, we had to do the completely design of the substation, civil, mechanical, and electrical design, buy all equipment, all material, make the construction, make the assembly, commission everything, and deliver it to the customer everything working on. And in this type of project, it's very common that you are going to use something that's called a S-curve. Basically, it's a way that you have to track your progress in the project. And basically, in this S-curve, it's the WBS. Then you divide it. That's also a very nice way, depending if you're using earned value or not. But anyway, you take the WBS and you break these down per week what you need to do. Or you can do it per month. But in this case, because when you talk about construction, very commonly you want to do this per week to see the progress what you're working on. What happened in the beginning of the project, and we start working the project, and there's something that it's always there, that's a deviation. You always see a deviation from what's planned versus the actual. And then the deviation, of course, can be positive, can be negative, but the deviation is always there. And something to keep in mind, if you see a project that has no variation from the plan for 2-3 months straight, I can guarantee to you that you should check it because something is wrong. So that's another tip that I want to give you. But coming back into what I was talking about the project. So we kick off the project, and in the beginning of the construction, then we had the area was released. Then we need to start to build the foundation, building the power building that would go the equipment inside it. Then we also had an outside part to be done there. But what happened is we start to face some challenges, and the contractor that we had at the time, he started to get behind. And of course, he started to get behind. Then there was, of course, a lot of pressure from the customer. There was a lot of pressure, of course, from my side, the contractor, talking with the owners of the company, discussing the actions, how to improve it. And at this point, I moved to the site myself because I was working in Brazil, but I was living in the south of Brazil. This project was in the northeast, and because of the project itself and the constraints that we have it, I ended up moving to the northeast where I worked as a project manager, but on site. And this deviation start to be there, then we start to push the contractor to find an action plan. We end up that create an action plan, and we start to close most of the gap. Well, with the S curve, basically we're checking the progress every week. And in the beginning, this gap starts to be about 5%, what is very concerning because usually after 5%, it's very hard that you're going to get back on track so easily. But in the end, with actions working on Saturdays and so on, we end up closing this gap in about 2%. And then, of course, then we had weekly reviews with the customer, then a kind of review board with the customer directors and with also directors for the company I was working on. And there was a lot of people in my team, they were telling me, let's just review the baseline. And because then we can avoid this pressure. And we were talking about the deviation sometimes, depending on the month. Some months will say, okay, we are 2% behind, sometimes 3% behind. Then we recover a bit, and that was kind of back and forth. And I was still keeping my baseline from the start of the project. And I was telling my team, no, I do not want to do that. Because in general, what happens? Of course, to review a baseline, you need to agree with the customer. And one of the reasons, of course, why my team is telling me that, because inside of the entire wind farm, I was working there with the company, with my company, not that I own the company, but the company I was working for. But there was also another 2 or 3 contractors that they were doing different activities there. And what happened that in this meeting, this review board, we were always on focus because we were always presenting around 2%, sometimes 1% deviation, and sometimes a few times we were ahead, but most of cases we were behind it. And then, of course, because you are the only company that was behind it, and there's people asking, you need to be aware, you're going to delay the project. And people start, oh, let's just agree a new baseline, then we review our S-curve, how we are going to distribute the activities, and then we are good, at least for a couple of months. And why I did not want to do that, even though the other companies, they were doing that. Because in some of the presentations, like the company that they were doing the heavy construction around it, like the roads and this kind of stuff, they were already their 4 or 5 baseline review. And I was telling them, I do not want to do that. Because first of all, if you just review the baseline or review to make this more comfortable to us, how does it happen? How does it help us to achieve our goal here? Because what happened, we are going to take this 2%, we are going to redistribute it, and then we are going to have 1 month and then say, everything is good, we zero the gap there, we are perfect. But might be that then we start to follow behind maybe another 1 or 2%. But then it's 1 or 2%, but from already a review. And every time you review, and then you move a bit your activities, right? Because you're reviewing for the future. That's the only way that you're going to back on track in your baseline. So every time you are reviewing your activities, you're pushing a bit here. But that's the thing, your deadline does not change. Because the wind farm had to be energized or to start the production of energy in a hard date there. Otherwise, the contract that I had in the company there, we had a penalty, if I remember well, at the time was about $10,000 or $15,000 at conversion rate at the time per day. Then every time I'm pushing this date here, those activities to be done in the future, and I'm pushing that and I'm reviewing my baseline, and I'm just telling myself, I'm good. And at some point, my hard milestones here, they will not change. Then I do not have time anymore. And even though those other companies were doing that, I say, I do not care. I'm not going to review this baseline unless we have a really good reason. Of course, if you have a big scope change, if you have a big variation there that really worthwhile, say, I don't know, there was, I don't know, a storm, something that was unpredictable there, that completely stopped all the activities for 1 month. Then of course, then I'm going to review a baseline. But just reviewing, having this rediscussion to redistribute the task for the future, they never appealed to me. Well, what happened is, of course, we worked like under a lot of pressure, and then people pushing us and telling us, and then I was always saying, hey guys, that it is the way it is. We have a hard milestone there that we need to achieve, that has a very heavy penalty for the company, because delaying like 1 week, it's very easy, and that would cost thousands of dollars for the company, and that of course would impact my business case, the margins for my project and everything else. And I say, I do prefer to have this discomfort right now. And we keep explaining. And now, of course, I was in the review board saying, okay, I have a 2% deviation here, but we are taking these actions. The critical path, it's safe. Okay, we have some other activities that needs to be done, but they are not part of the critical path. Then everything there was still manageable, and then we would explain the details. I would get a lot of questions, sometimes a lot of pressure, but okay, I was living with that. And I was explaining this for my internal stakeholders, for my external stakeholders. And what happened then? We achieved the target that we had there. It was not easy. We ended up working extra. That's probably one of the times that I worked hard. At least I worked more in my life, because I've worked 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. I've worked in Saturdays. I've worked on holidays, but I was on site, and that was about it. But that's why we end up achieving that. And how I would see in different projects in the same company I was working on, people, they were reviewing this baseline, as I mentioned here, just realigning with the customer. Okay, those activities are going to get done. But when you start to have those kind of variation, what ends up is that you are just piling more activities to be done in the future, and in the end, it gets much more difficult to manage. And that's why I'm telling you this story, because even though sometimes it's difficult, you get the pressure, it's much better keeping your right baseline there and managing through via action plans, explaining what's going on, because then you're also managing expectations. Because one of the worst things that can happen is that you keep reviewing those baselines, and you are mentioning everything is fine, everything is fine, everything is fine. Then again, activities are just moving. And at some point you hit your hard deadline there, and nothing can be done. Then you need to move your hard deadline. But you have a lot of other consequences there. But then people just put a lot of pressure on you, and much more, because then you are going to get the kind of the label that you do not know what you're doing, that you never informed the company properly, that if you would have informed the managers or the directors on time, they could have done something there, but you were not properly communicating. Then you have a lot of other types of discussion that you do not want to have. So it's much better then you keep this baseline and explain the deviations, and you explain the variations, then enter in this kind of loop that, okay, I'm going, because there's a lot of project managers there, and I've heard that from quite a few of them, saying, I do not want my project to be on classified as red. I do not want my project on escalation meetings discussions. So what I can tell you, sometimes your project's going to be red. Sometimes you're going to need for escalation meetings. It is what it is. That's the reality. You cannot avoid that. You need to handle that. And if you're afraid of an escalation meeting, if you're afraid of the pressure, likely you should not work as a project manager. What you need to understand there is you're not doing yourself a favor, and you're not doing to your team a favor either by reviewing those baselines. And I've seen a lot of weird stuff in my life. I've seen, this is the example I gave to you, and I've seen years later on, when I was already working in Europe here, then basically we were a global team, so there was a team in Europe where I was part. And there was also a team, I think in this case was China. And what happened? We were pointing out deviations, and the Chinese team, they were always on spot. No, we are always good. No deviation, no deviation. And at some point, I had this discussion with my manager, saying, how can it be? I'm not saying that you cannot have performance variation. Of course you can. But I was telling him basically, we use the same supply chain. We use the same suppliers. We are working with the same factories. So it's impossible that they do not have any type of deviation. And my manager, when I had a discussion with him, he was also triggered and he was like, yeah, you're right. Let's try to get to the bottom of that. And what we find out, that's why they were never late, that they were just reviewing the baseline. So if you delay if your supplier delays something, what do? Oh, it's delayed 1 month. And you go, you save a new baseline. And you do that. And you just talk with some people, say, hey, I'm going to review here, that's the new plan. And they review, because then they pointed out no gap, no deviation. But what's the thing? If you're doing that often, then you start to see your projects delaying. In some cases, you have those penalties, and then you reach those penalties, then there's a lot of bad things. And I've seen that happening a lot. And I've seen that happening with people because they feel uncomfortable because of the pressure. But I've seen that happening because people, sometimes they try to filter the information, because you as a project manager, you need to make sure that you filter only the important and relevant information for the level up, which is true. But of course, if your project is delayed, that's the relevant information that you need to pass through. And I've seen that that's one of the example of another project. I think this was about 2013 or 2014. One of the colleagues in the company, he left, or they rearranged the areas, or I do not remember exactly, and I got one of their projects. And in the handover, the project manager told me that everything was okay, they were progressing, he presented some risks. I talked with the site manager, and the site manager told me everything was fine. Again, EPC contract. Then I said, okay, everything is fine. But the site was very close by from the office, meaning probably around 50 kilometers. And in the other week, I said, okay, I'm going to visit the site. And I drove there. And when I got there, the site manager was there, and he was talking about, explaining to me how things were under control and so on. And then I decided to walk. I said, okay, I'm here. That's why you go to the site, right? That's also, if you connect a bit with the link that sometimes I discuss here, that's the idea of going to the Gemba. Gemba means where the place is really executed. So it's very important that you always visit the place. And then when I start walking the site, then the infrastructure, the civil construction there was ready. And then we should be in part of the assembly phase. And then, of course, I already knew at least, or I knew between brackets, because I thought that I knew the status of the project based on the information I got from the project manager, but from the site manager. And when I start to walk through the area, I start to see, hey, but they just told me that all the cables, they are already connected with the right equipments in the control center. Then when I start to look, say, yeah, but the cables are not here. Then I see something is wrong. And when I do like that, okay, now I'm going to check everything, because something is wrong here. Then I start really to kind of inspect everything. Likely, I don't know, start to wait there. And then I go back to the office or to the site office and say, what's going on here? You just told me that this is done. I'm just coming here from there. It's not done. Then the site manager, no, it is. Then I took my phone and say, here's the picture. You're telling me that the cables are connected. The cables are not even there. And then the site manager looked to me like, ugh. And then he started to see that he talked with someone else. That the lead of the team told him that was. Then we did not enter this discussion, but in the end, the site manager ended up being fired, and one of the reasons was that, say, uh, one of the worst things that you can do is tell that everything is okay, and a few months later, things go to shit, and they say, yeah, but that has been happening for months already. Why you're not selling it? Why you're not saying anything? And that's why how you're signalizing those things. You're signalizing those things to your KPIs, key performance indicators. One of them that I just gave the example here is your timeline. You can use an S curve, as I mentioned here, or you can do the tracking via MS project, or you can use earned value management with a KPI there, or any other type of tracking, burn ups, burn downs, or any other type of trackers that you have. What's important that you always reflect the actual situation that you have there, and you always are true with yourself. You are the project manager. You cannot tell me that that's okay that every month that you're going to, or every couple of months that you're going to review your baseline to make sure that you close the gap in the progress, and you think that's a normal thing to do because you're going to say, I do not want to be in an escalation meeting. Yeah, if you have this type of project problem that your project is delayed, maybe you need to be in escalation meeting because then you have the right resource, the right support, and the right priority in the organization to make sure that's solved. But because you're trying to take the easy route there to avoid some type of pain, some type of pressure for you and for your team, and then you keep doing that. And I can tell you that I've seen that happen in Brazil, I've seen that happen in the Netherlands, I've seen that happen in China, in the US, everywhere around the world. And what happened is, in general, those project managers, they do that. They have an easier life for a amount of time. But also, usually, they also do not get the chance to grow in their career. They do not get good feedback because sooner or later, the reality will pop up. And if you have been reviewing your baselines and things are uh, get out of control, and you have not been reporting that, then you're going to have a much more difficult discussion. And in some cases, as I mentioned with the site manager that was reporting everything was okay, that he even ended up being fired because of course he was saying, yeah, but the task lead or whoever you're going to call it, the lead of the activity in the field or the planner or whoever, he was reporting everything is fine. You see, you are the site manager, you are here. How can you be that you're just working the office and you're not capable of walk outside to see what's going on there? But I have meetings, I talk with people. I don't care. That's why the concept of going to Gamma is so important. And that's why you really should avoid this type of pitfall. And I understand that can be much more comfortable to review the baseline, having a new plan, close the gap. But unless you have a really big change here, and I mean a really big change, what's the change that you have there? You have a big change in the scope. You have a big change in the critical path because of a customer request, changing requirements or whatever. Then then you can tell me that you're going to review your baseline. But tell me that you're going to review your baseline just to replan it because you're late? No, you should not review your baseline. You should come up with an action plan. Then you're going to show me how you're going to continue to execute the project plus the extra activities that you need to close the gap. Then you can convince someone that you're going to do something and that you have this on track, and then you can follow up the right direction. If you just keep revealing that you're just piling up more activities, and at some point you're not going to do it. And I've seen people putting pressure, saying you must release these or you must get this result. And sometimes people just give in to the pressure. And one of your jobs as a project manager is hold your ground when you need to hold your ground. Don't create unachievable stuff, weird plans because people are telling you to do it. Your commitment should be with the truth, with the facts. If you say, if it's late, so be it. take it. It's late. And then take the actions to try to recover it. Not doing the other way around, because if you do the other way around, what happens in most of the cases and why those things end up bad? Because instead of coming up with an action plan and how you're going to work to close the gap, and this action plan, of course, must be feasible and achievable, you're going to just review your baseline. Then for a few weeks, you're fine. Or for a couple of months, you're fine, because you might take an activity that was here and you push to the end of the project. But at some point, you're going to have so many stuff in parallel that you cannot execute it. Or you need a huge amount of extra resource to execute it. And I've seen people doing that also. It ends up that you say, no, we are late. Now we figure out we are late. We are going to put a lot of resource. And suddenly they spend more than 3 times their budget. They kill the business case. And then you have a very difficult discussion also to have, to explain how you can overexpand your budget like that. So the easy choice, or at least what seems the easy choice, will lead you to trouble in your project. So this is a pitfall that can be very common, but don't go in that direction if you want to be successful as a project manager. Understand that pressure, people asking stuff, managers telling you what to do, that's part of the job. If you want to be a project manager, you're going to have pressure. You're going to have pressure internally from your manager and directors. They want this to get done. You're going to get pressure externally from your customers. You're going to get pressure from your team. And you need to know how to handle it, how to manage, how to balance those kind of stuff. And of course, that's why a good project manager is not so easy to find, but also that's why a good project manager is usually well paid, because you learn how to balance those different pushes and still do the right thing for the organization. Still make sure that if your project is ready, you report as ready. Instead of reviewing a baseline, you present an action plan and you ask for support. Because be smart here, right? Instead of reviewing your baseline and pushing a problem for the future, you can go for an escalation meeting and you can just ask for support. Say, this is my action plan, but I need this and this guy here to work this as a priority. I need their full attention for the project for the next 2 or 3 months or 2 or 3 weeks or whatever time you need it. Then you get the attention to make sure you get the resources to do what you need to do. But that's never going to happen if you say, oh, my project is on track, everything is good. So why do you want priority over all the other projects? So understanding how to balance and how to play with this, it's very fundamental and essential part of being a project manager. And of course, you can say that you need priority because otherwise you're going to miss your milestone there. But also that's a different discussion that you have, and you need to make sure that you have it very clear what's your critical path, what's your requirements, and everything else. But for you, what's important if you're in a situation like that? Don't keep reviewing your baselines like that. Report the right situation. Ask for help. Point out the critical activities that you need to get done. Point out the resource that you need, the extra budget that you need, the extra support that you need, the prioritization that you need. Because that's what's going to help you to deliver your project on time and successfully. And even though if everybody else is doing it, that's okay. Let them do whatever they want. And I can tell you in a lot of organizations that I've worked on, I can tell you, I got this feedback more than once from managers, from directors, and sometimes even from the customer that delivering bad news is not a nice thing to do. You need, of course, to have a right way to do it. But they say, yeah, you always reporting the facts. And you report the facts, and you already, if the facts are bad, you already presented what you need. And you say, I need help with this, and that. I need this manager here to clear this roadblock. And then of course you progress. Then you get your project back on track, and then you get back for a more comfortable situation. But if you take the easy way, if you go to this pitfall, I can tell you, sooner or later you're going to face problems with your project, and you're going to have projects failing, bad feedback that's not going to reflect in your performance, not reflect well in your career, and that of course that will not help you to be a successful project manager. So make sure you avoid this pitfall. Make sure that you work with your baseline in a proper way. Again, make sure you like and share this video, because that helps me to see the value that from what I'm doing here. It helps with this content to get to more people, and more people can learn project management. And also you can share this with people that you think, okay, this person needs to hear that to work into their project. Also, if you make sure that you follow me for more content, I'm always adding more content in my channel. Every week you are going to see something there on YouTube, but also make sure you follow me on Instagram. There I share smaller content that you can consume daily, or even sometimes in few seconds. I also have a Q&A box open every day. You can ask all project management related questions that you want. And if you have questions, of course, feel free to write here in the comments, or just go on Instagram, send me a direct message, or put in the Q&A box. I'm always here to support, because if your goal is to be a successful project manager or to develop your project management skills, my goal is to support you in this journey. Thank you very much, and see you soon.